What's up, everybody? Michael Walsh here. So I want to talk about the welterweight division because, I was thinking about it. I think it might be the best division in the sport right now, and I don't think it's been this good since GSP was around. Now, if you've been watching that sport back long and can think back to it, the welterweight division was one of the premier divisions in the sport. And it's not as extreme as this, but it's sort of since then undergone a process similar to the light heavyweight division. Because similarly, back in the day, back when, Chuck Liddell, Wanderlei Silva, Shogun Rua, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, when those guys were around, the light heavyweight division was one of the biggest divisions. It was one of the most important, one of the premier divisions with the biggest stars. And now it's looked at as one of the bad divisions. And welterweight has largely experienced a decline since the end of the GSP era. Now, it wasn't just, it didn't just go to shit as soon as GSP left, because after him we had, of course, guys like Hendricks and Lawler and Condit and other good guys. And there's always been good guys in each era. So many people might consider the Woodley reign to be the most boring, and see the Usman reign as being better. Although even there, whilst Usman is an all-time great fighter, and whilst he had a good rivalry with Covington and whatnot, his era, I think as a whole, was possibly worse than Woodley's era in terms of the division as a whole, not him as a champion. And since he left, this sort of post-Usman era with Leon and then Bilal and then JDM, who, some people even before the Islam fight were kind of describing as sort of a placeholder champion, and now that's certainly going to be the narrative about him now that he's lost. The welterweight division has just not been what it was in its golden age until now, I think, because it's a division that always had slow turnover. It was a division where guys like Matt Hughes stuck around weirdly long. Guys like Condit and Maya stuck around weirdly long. It always took a weird amount of time for the young up-and-comers to usurp the old dogs and become genuine contenders. Not unlike what we've seen at lightweight over recent years, where guys like Fiziev get rebounded by Gaethje, where guys like Benoit Saint-Denis get rebounded by Poirier, et cetera, et cetera. We've been seeing that kind of generation after generation at welterweight, and sure, it adds, when that kind of thing happens, it adds to the old dog's legacy. But it can be bad for the division when the top guys have just already fought each other and the young guys aren't doing their part to climb the ranks and earn title shots. It can create a lot of staleness. And welterweight right now is just full of legitimate contenders. And, for the most part, the male champions in the UFC right now are all pretty good. Pantoja, great champion. Merab, great champion. Volk, great champion. Ilya, Islam, Chimaev, Alex, Tom, it's a great time for UFC champions in the male divisions at the moment. But for welterweight to once again, back in the GSP days, to once again have not only a great champion, but have the pound for pound best fighter as the champion, and for it to be a stacked top 10, that's fantastic. And unlike the GSP days, Islam's not fought any of these dudes. He fought JDM and that's it. But if you look at the rest, after Islam, you've got, this isn't the correct order as far as the top 10 rankings, but it includes guys like JDM, Morales, Shavkat, Gary, Brady, Muhammad, Usman, Buckley. This is great. This reminds me of back in about 8 years or so ago when middleweight was stacked, when it was just full of Rockhold, Weidman, TRT Vitor, Bisping, Mousasi, Jacare, Romero and Whitaker were on the come up, Tim Kennedy. There are certain phases in divisions where almost everyone in the top 10 you could see getting a title shot. Praches, I forgot about Praches at welterweight right now. It's looking very good. And it's obviously not pound for pound the best division in terms of skill. That's always going to be something like bantamweight. But if you compare it to bantamweight, where Merab has effectively cleared out the division, he's lapping everyone. He's got to do rematches now. And other than like Song Yadong and Batista, who just lost to Umar, like Merab has fought most of the guys who are even sniffing a title shot, or even not even sniffing a title shot, but within arm's reach of getting a fight to get a title shot. You know, where they would just have to be gifted the opportunity effectively to even fight him. Which does happen when champions just have long reigns. Like Mighty Mouse fought guys who were, you know, at times like ranked as low as like number 7 or something because he'd already beaten everyone else. And we'll see what happens with Merab, but like that's not a great place for a division to be. It's like it's a great place for the champion, but as far as the division as a whole, it just feels stale and dull. It just feels like, okay, well, there's no action happening here. There's no new contenders. There's no matchups we're interested in. The only thing we can get out of this is watching the champ, you know, add another notch on his belt. That's like all we can get out of this. And that's like largely what flyweight's like at the moment. Like obviously Van is like a cool young challenger for Pantoja, but if he beats him, it's like we're back to square one. That's Merab's situation. Volk, you know, has some good stuff going on because he has Evloev and to a much lesser degree Murphy. But other than that, that division's a little stale too. I mean, and he's beaten, you know, the other old guys. And he himself, while I think he could do some genuine GOAT shit if he can beat those guys, if he can beat Evloev particularly, but like he's overshadowed by the fact that he's like, you know, there as a champion, but for the grace of Ilya leaving. And again, lightweight is fantastic, and we've got fresh matchups for Ilya, but the division as a whole is like pretty stale. And it's still one of the best divisions, but I think compared to welterweight, you know, it's not as good. And middleweight's, you know, interesting at the moment because we want to see Chimaev, who's relatively new to the division. We want to see him fight these guys. And he's got a decent crop of dudes at the top. But it's reminiscent of bantamweight, where like, yeah, like Fluffy Hernandez is interesting, and Brandon Allen is kind of interesting, and Imanov is interesting, but like past that, there's not much. It's sort of like how at bantamweight, like, yeah, O'Malley's good, yeah, Jan is good, yeah, Umar is good, yeah, Sandhagen is good, but very quickly there's like a quality drop. Again, whereas at welterweight, like almost the full top 10 are pretty legit, where I would be interested to watch them fight Islam. And then, of course, light heavyweight is just not very good, and neither is heavyweight. So, and, you know, and Tom, if he beats Gon, I mean, he'll have beaten almost everyone except for, like, Lewis and Almeida. And, you know, and maybe Alex will go up or whatever. But middleweight is, or excuse me, but welterweight is just where it's at right now. Again, it has the best champion, the greatest champion. Like, and to put it more accurately, like, Islam isn't a great welterweight champion. He is great, and he is the welterweight champion. He is the greatest fighter in the sport at the moment. Although, you know, it's close. Like, Merab and Ilya are not far behind, but with his win over JDM, I think you got to give the pound-for-pound number 1 spot to Islam. So he's the greatest fighter in the sport, and he's in arguably the greatest division in terms of contenders lining the whole top 10, and he's not fought any of them except for the guy whose belt he just took. Like, this is beautiful. Like, this is just a great spot, and no other division in terms of who their champion is, in terms of who they have left to fight, and in terms of how stacked the top 10 is, no other division is close. So, again, this is a great time for welterweight, and it feels good as a longtime fan who remembers the GSP era when this division was awesome, because I've heard people over the years slowly say that, like, welterweight is becoming one of the shitty divisions because, you know, most people recognize that light heavyweight and heavyweight kind of suck compared to everything else. Middleweight is not that much better, if we're being real. And some people have pointed out, like, man, welterweight's almost looking like middleweight these days. Like, and that's probably like weight cutting. That's probably like more and more of the guys who used to line the middleweight, light heavyweight, and so on divisions are just like now in the lower divisions. They're now at welterweight and the lower or below. Like, you know, like, you know, someone like Fedor Emelianenko, like, you know, the heavyweight GOAT. Like, if he were fighting today, he'd probably just be a middleweight. Like, he's like the size of Robert Whittaker, you know? Like, if Crow Cop were around today in his prime, he'd probably be fighting guys like, well, he's not around either anymore, but he'd be fighting guys like Luke Rockhold, you know, he wouldn't be fighting at heavyweight. And similarly, like guys like Machida and whatnot, like they actually went down to middleweight in their career, and you know, you could probably go even lower. And yeah, so like someone like GSP even is like a modern day lightweight, and that was, I've talked about this before, but his fight with Hendricks was sort of a wake up call to like, hey, the weight cutting is getting more maxed out now. You are effectively a lightweight now. Hendricks is a welterweight. You are a lightweight, and and GSP is just like the same size as Khabib and Islam. He's not like a huge dude, and and so all that's just sort of adding explanation for how this happened, how welterweight sort of fell from grace, so to speak, even though we've had great champions, of course, the standout being Usman. And even he, Usman is great. Usman is like a top 15 GOAT, in my opinion. But even during his reign, like he wasn't the best. Like some people put him as the pound for pound best, but I always thought that was bullshit because that was happening whilst Volkanovski was still the champion. That was during Volk's title reign too. And I think eventually people kind of overall, when Volk won the Holloway trilogy, if memory serves, I think everyone had him as the pound for pound best. But like the whole time, I was like, Usman is not better than Volk. Usman is fantastic, but he's not better than Volk. He's not pound for pound better than Volk. Whereas right now, again, it's like the GSP era because Islam is pound for pound number one. It's not a featherweight, it's him. It's not Ilya, it's not Volk. It's not even Merab, it's him. And again, he's just got this crop of contenders. And they're all interesting. There would be some bullshit fights for him to take next. Like if he, instead of fighting Gary or Morales or Shavkat, fights Usman, that'd be horseshit. But if he wants to stick around and see how long he can go, like if he just wants to see how many defenses he can get, and he beats someone like Gary or Shavkat, and Usman gets another win, like I'd love to see that fight. All these fights are interesting on their own. Him versus Brady would be interesting. Him versus, even like Edwards, Edwards is not sniffing a title shot. He's got to like win and not get cut more than anything at this point. But even that, like I'd be interested. I'd be interested in seeing Islam fight him. Like it's all interesting because they're fresh matchups and there's the size dynamic, and you just want to see how much Islam can like clean house on these dudes. So it just feels good because this is a division that used to be at the top and hasn't been for like at least 10 years or so. So it feels good. It feels really good, actually. So I just wanted to chime in on that.